Or here's a great thing too, that it's often said that the ability to recognize patterns is one of the signs of intelligence. So I'm going to list a pattern here, and let's see if we can recognize it in less than 5,000 or 6,000 years. And when you think of the plains and hillsides of Iraq, is the first thing that you think of normally cedar forests so thick that sunlight never touches the ground? That's how they were. The first written myth of this culture is Gilgamesh going in and deforesting those hills to make cities. When you think of the Arabian Peninsula, is the first thing that you think of oak forests? That's what it used to be. Let's move a little bit west, and you get the cedars of Lebanon. They still have one on their flag. I never can remember if it was Plato or Aristotle, I think it might have been Plato, who was commenting on how deforestation was destroying the springs and rivers in Greece. And I'm sure that those in power said, well, we need to study it a little bit longer first to make sure there's a connection. Greece was heavily forested, Italy was heavily forested, North Africa was heavily forested. You know, this culture has been deforesting any way of life that's based on the use of non-renewable resources and based on the hyper-exploitation of renewable resources, so-called. Any way of life that perceives the world around them as consisting of resources and not beings to enter into these reciprocal, and communities to enter into these reciprocal relationships with, is going to destroy its land base. This culture has been destroying its land base for the last 6,000 years. That's not very smart on a finite planet. And once again, we can pick whatever measure you'd like, whether it's migratory songbirds, sturgeons, deforestation, and pick a measure. Things are... we're really fucked. You know, give me a threshold. Give me a threshold at which you'll finally call this an apocalypse. Give me a threshold, more importantly, at which you finally fight back. You know, what's it going to take? Will it take the death of salmon entirely? Maybe it'll take the death of polar bears. Maybe it'll take the death of, you know, whatever your favorite migratory songbird is. You know, there's got to be a threshold at which people are going to... Or how about, maybe it'll take... you know, I used to have this sort of hobby of asking people if they like their jobs. About 90% say no. What does it mean when the vast majority of people spend the vast majority of their waking hours doing things they don't want to do? How crazy is that? So, you know, you're working a 40-hour-a-week job that you don't really like. So is that enough for you to start resisting when it's your own life? Or how about this? How about, you know, rates of cancer are just going through the roof? And so at talks, when I ask people, how many of you have had someone you love get killed by cancer? 70 to 80% say yes. So it's like, okay, you're not going to fight back when your lover dies of cancer? When your mother, your father, your child, your brother, your sister, your best friend? You're not going to fight back when you get cancer yourself in your own body? I have Crohn's disease, which is a disease of civilization. You know, give me a threshold. That one of the smartest things the Nazis did was they co-opted rationality and they co-opted hope by making it so that at every step of the way it was in the Jews' rational best interest to not resist. So would you rather get an ID card? Would you rather resist and possibly get killed? Want to move to a ghetto? Want to resist and possibly get killed? Want to get on a cattle car? Want to resist and possibly get killed? At every step of the way they're faced with that choice. It's a brilliant move on the Nazis' part. You want to take a shower? You want to resist and possibly get killed. There's a very interesting thing about it, which is that the Jews who participated in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising had a much higher rate of survival than those who went along, which is something we all need to keep in mind over the next 10 years. But my point is the same thing's happening today. That's why I say, give me a threshold. Because, okay, so do I want to really try to do something to help the salmon? Or do I want to, and possibly get killed or put in prison for the rest of my life? Do I want to really oppose the system? Or is it okay for the salmon to go? Okay, how about the lampreys? How about the sturgeon? How about the polar bears? How about your brother from cancer? You know, that's why at some point we just have to say, enough is enough. I mean, if I'm going to be in a concentration camp, I would much rather be one of the privileged ones than not. You know, if I'm going to be in this death camp system, sure, honestly, I would rather not be. There are more slaves in the world today than there were who came across in the Middle Passage, and I would much rather be in the position I am than be a slave. I would much rather not be starving to death. I mean, I'm incredibly privileged, and it's my responsibility to use that privilege to bring down the whole system. Otherwise, I'm not worth shit.